Welcome to TechFest Java. In this video, we are going to discuss about Springboot API Gateway. This topic is basically very important. In previous videos, we have seen that how we can register any microservices, Springboot microservices with Eureka Server, and how we can create any microservice as a Eureka client for that. Now, basically, if we talk about any enterprise application which is basically based on microservices architecture, when we talk about any of the user interface, that would be basically any HTML page which is basically having multiple buttons and multiple operations or multiple pages. And those pages is basically rendering some data or showing some data on the basis of different microservices APIs, and those microservices are basically having a different URLs, and it is basically very difficult for interface level, user interface level, UI level, to incorporate all those microservice calls, because each microservice having deployed on different ports, different IPs are there, and while doing the load balancing, their IPs and addresses for IPs and ports will also become changed in case of load balancer will be implemented. So it is quite difficult for handle all such things from the user interface perspective. So to resolve all such issues, basically Springboot provided an API gateway. That is basically what is it is providing. It is basically working as a front layer where user interface is basically directly calling API gateway URL, and API gateway will then decided that at which API microservice API need to be processed as request using Eureka server. So let's just see that how the request flow will be go. So suppose that we have any UI interface, and that user interface service basically calling some URL which is basically a processing for service microservice 1. So in that case, is basically there are some parts in the URI which is denoting these service calls, and we will see how we will proceed those calls. So once we have proceed those calls from user interface to API gateway is generally decide that to which API, which microservice this particular call is required, and those that on that microservice it is basically forwarding that request. Either it is forwarding the service 1 or it is forwarding the service 2. And once the service 1 or 2, whoever is processing that request, will proceed and generate the response that will send to the basically API gateway, and API gateway then send that response to the user interface. So here basically API gateway is basically working as a front layer which is basically providing a single URL for external interface external services which are going to consume those microservices. So this is the whole and soul workflow of or request flow of any request, how API gateway service will forward or request and responses. Let's just see the implementations, how we can create a API gateway services and how we can proceed the request flow with from API gateway to different services. So let's just jump onto this. Okay, so for the demonstration of API gateway, I am going to take same Eureka server which we have created in previous videos, and I am taking a same Eureka client project which is basically we have created in previous videos for that too. So for this I am now going to create one more client basically, which is basically registering as a second service. So let me just try to write it as Springboot demo data client client 2. Okay, so this is that. Go to next. Okay, now here basically I have to choose the Spring Web, and we have to choose the discovery client, and what else I have to choose? I guess that's it. Oh, meanwhile it is importing, so let me just quickly go through with this. So in previous video we have been created one Eureka server, which is basically having one main class which is annotated with the enable Eureka server, and we have some dependencies basically in home.xml related to Eureka server. This is the we are using Netflix Eureka server dependencies for that, and if we talk about the properties file, we have defined this property file returning on 876.4, and these are the registry and Eureka things we have pointed false. And apart from this, basically if we want to with this first client, so we have created main class which is basically annotated with the enable Eureka client, and apart from this basically we have created one controller also which is denoting like this, like the consumer 1, and we have one API which is basically nothing but returning the consumer message. So let me just quickly go through with this also. So this basically contains two things. One is basically pointing to Eureka, and this is basically using for editing the actuator thing. So this is the instance making as true, and this is the port on which it is working. So our project is basically now imported and built. So let me just start quickly define the consumer 2 and Eureka client 2. So let me just quickly define either one controller class, or let me just define over here itself. I'm not going to define controller class here else. So the enable Eureka client. Okay, now I am taking test controller, and one more thing I have to do is basically I am going to make it as request mapper, and here basically I am defining consumer-2. Okay, now here I am going to define one get mapping. I'm going to quickly to make this video little shorter. I am just defining like message 2 here, public string get message, and it will just return as consumer 2. Yes, that's it for this class. Now I'm going to open this and I'm just doing the copy paste thing, and let me just change the URL a little bit. I'm removing this because I haven't added the dependency for actuator. So let me just define its name as true, port is as taking as 3. Okay, so that's it. Let me just check once more time that the dependencies been added or not. Okay, so here Chrome is giving error. To resolve this, let me just quickly so just copy this and paste it here. I'm saving it to resolve this. Resolve, and this is Eureka Client. This is even, yeah, all set. So let me just run once and see that if everything is working. So let me just first try to run the Eureka server. Okay, let me just wait for until the well-done injection will be done. Okay, the server is started. Okay, now my Eureka server is get started. So let me just try to hit this Eureka server. Localhost link 8761. Okay, so currently we can see that there is no instances registered with this. So let me just quickly start these two Eureka clients. So let me start first the first one. Okay, it is started on 9092 port. Let me just refresh it to check that it is registered with the service. Yes, it is got registered. Let me just quickly start second service also. Okay, it is started on 9093. Let me just refresh it again. My both the consumer services, or I would say the Eureka client services, are registered with Eureka server. Okay, now what I have to do, I have to create one API gateway service, which is basically, okay, now first I'll just show you. If I want to call this service, right, let me call this like consumer 2, consumer 1 slash, okay, let me shift that. What is the URL for this? Okay, here define consumer 1 messaging. Fine, so consumer 1 message 1, and we can see that we are getting that message. Okay, and If I want to go and hit the service again for the second service, we can see that we can hit this service. Let me just quickly define this also. Okay, where's the main class for this? Yeah, this is the main class. We have consumer 2 like this, and we have message 2 like this. So let me just call this service to show you. Yeah, both these services are working. Now, as we all see that we have to use these APIs URLs to call these services. What if I will call only one service, one URL? This is basically having deployed on port 9093, and this is basically deployed on port 9092. And so for user interface service, it is basically quite difficult. Suppose that this particular instance, this particular service is deployed on 2 different instances. So at which instance this service need to be, this request need to be go, it is quite difficult to be decided by the user interface level. So I mean UI level, or I would say the HTML page level. So for this, basically what we have to do, we have to create one API gateway service. So I'm quickly just defining the API gateway service for this. Okay, now here let me just quickly check API gateway. This. Let me just go next. This is the gateway thing I have to add, and one more thing I have to add is basically, say, the actuator. So Springboot actuator. So these 2 things I'm adding for this. Let me just quickly finish this. It is importing. Let's just finish this and we will start the changes. Okay, now build is been done. Let me just quickly open it. It's home, and let me just quickly paste this to resolve this error. Okay, fine. Now you can see that there is a 2 dependencies we have added. We have added actuator, we have added the gateway. This is basically a Spring Cloud gateway dependencies we have been added. Now here is basically what we have to do. Oh, I forgot to add one more thing. This service is also basically behave like let me just first close these servers and we will start it again, otherwise it will get pop up again and again. Okay, now here basically I have forgot to add the Eureka client related dependencies, because API gateway is also work as a Eureka client. So let me just quickly copy paste it from this file. This dependency I have to add. Let me just quickly add it here. The build. Building happened. Let me just open this API gateway's main class first. Okay, now here what I have to do, we have to define enable Eureka client. So this is one of the things we have to do, and let me just, now here basically what exactly we have to do, we have to define the path where we are going to be defined or get those service calls, when those service related calls will be coming to API gateway, at which port, which server the API gateway should hit to get the response for those services. So for that is basically we have to define. Now let me just quickly define the server dot port. Okay, now this port I am just giving it 808 or something, 8081, and then we have Spring dot application dot name. Here I am just giving API gateway, and the third thing which we have to define is basically what would be the route for this gateway services we are defining. So that is Spring dot cloud dot dot okay, now this is the one we have to define, gateway dot id, and here let me just quickly define all the properties, then we will copy it and I will fill value. Spring dot cloud dot gateway dot routes dot UI, and let me define one more thing, UI dot cloud just copy paste it because this system is not running quickly. So predicates, and that's it. So this is for first service, first Eureka client service, And now I'm going to define this is for second Eureka Client service. I'm putting as 1 1 and will define as 1. Okay. Now here basically what is the name of the first service I have given? Basically Eureka Client 2. So let me just define here for client 2, here for consumer 1, and what would be the URI? So http :/localhost 9092, okay, 9092 slash, right? So this is the same I am defining here. Only thing is that the second service is running on port 8089093, and now we have to define the predicates. Okay. So we need to define here, not here. Three properties I need to define as a key value pair. Let me just correct this. This gateway is basically routing to the request if that request is coming as this, and here basically what we have to define, the path, and path is something which is basically defining what URI of the API we are going to. Let me just try to define the path also. Path equal to slash. Okay, what is the path? Let me just quickly open this controller. Okay, so here basically I'm going to tell this. Okay, this slash asterisk. That means whatever the APIs we are defining over here, the base URI will the slash consumer one. So with the slash consumer one, post that whatever the URI will become, it is delegating the request to the this service. And for the second service, similarly, what we have to do, we have to define. Okay, then the second service, and this one is the second service we have created. So let me just quickly open it. Let me just copy here, paste this way, path equal to slash this slash asterisk. Okay, I think we have done the things. Let me just Let me just run these services one by one. First, I am going to run the Eureka server. Okay, the server is started. Let me just refresh this. So check that it is working fine. And yeah, it is working fine. So quickly, okay, let me just quickly start the service client 2. Okay, now it's started. Let me just start API gateway and then we'll try to hit the service using API gateway URL. Okay, now services are up, and let me just quickly hit the Eureka server. Okay, just 8761. Okay, now here if you can see that there are 3 services are up and running, and just quickly see that what is the port on which the okay. So API gateway is running on 8081 port. So let me quickly create the request URL http localhost 8081, and as you can see that this is our first URL. How it is mean? Basically, we are using this service, API gateway service, and we are asking for consumer 1 and get message 1, which is basically having a service in client 1. So if we can see here, the client 1 controller, Eureka client 1 controller, there is a one /message service which is having a request mapping as consumer 1 URL. And what URL we are basically hitting? We are hitting localhost 8081. So if we copy this URL, I am going to paste it in another tab, and here basically I am saying consumer 2. Consumer 2 is basically the Eureka client 2 URL, and here I am hitting this service. Now I am getting consumer 2. Here I am getting consumer 1. Here I am getting consumer 2. Consumer 2 is basically returning by the client 2, Eureka client 2. If we show that, yeah, this is. So this way we can route the API gateway. Using API gateway, we can route the request to the Eureka client services using Eureka server end. Apart from this, we can use load balancer also, which we will see in later videos, that how we can use the load balancer and create multiple instances of these services which are basically registered on Eureka server. And then after, we don't need to define the exact URL for these route URIs. We just need to define the load balancer and the service names for that. We will see this in later videos. That's it for this video. It's very important in terms of microservice architecture. If you like this video, please subscribe my channel, comment out, like the video, and also press the bell icon so that you will get the notification for upcoming video. Thank you for watching.